I'll get started. Thank you for joining tonight. And for those of you that'll watch, my name is Scott Thompson. I'm the Director of Curriculum here in Franklin West. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to Gina. Gina works for Whole Health Nutrition, based out of Colchester, and she's a registered dietitian with the state, amongst a whole other pedigree of various information. And we're grateful for her time and to share some information and some resources for us on child nutrition. So Gina, thank you for being here. And yeah, we're excited to listen and learn.
Great. Well, thank you for that introduction. I'm happy to be here and to share some of my knowledge with everybody tonight, whether you're watching this live or watching it recorded. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen. And let's see, we'll make sure that that works. Can everyone see this PowerPoint here? And I'm gonna, let's see. Yep, we've got it. Okay, so let me go to slideshow and we'll get started. So one of the things that I like to do when I'm, providing information like this is I do like to rope the audience in when possible. So for those of you who are here live, I would, encourage you to use that chat function, and we'll be able to see any questions or comments that come through. If you're watching afterward, that's cool. I'll try to kind of narrate any of the questions that come through, so you'll be a part of it in a way. So as Scott mentioned, tonight we're focusing on childhood and family nutrition. Now, this is a very broad topic, right? This title, it could include a number of different things. Tonight, as much as I would love to dive in really deep and to give you all the nitty-gritty on everything, we know that there's so much out there about childhood nutrition and how we can apply that to our family lives. So tonight, we're going to give you this, overview of nutrition. Hopefully you'll leave with a few key tips and pointers and some new ideas. And I'll leave some time at the end so that I can open it up for questions. If questions come along during the presentation, please again put that in the chat, and we'll go ahead and get started. So the first thing I want to cover and talk about is nutrition, right? How does food power not only your body, but also your brain? We know this is super important when it comes to our kiddos as well as ourselves. So we know that our bodies and our brains depend on the food we eat. A lot of times I use analogies, especially with our young kids, as well as our adolescents into the teenage years, and even beyond with adults too. I feel like analogies can really help. So what I'm showing you here is, right, this battery level, and it's above a human body. So that battery level is pretty low. What we want to do is add some nutrition in. We're going to add food, we're going to add water, and our battery level is charged up. Same thing happens with our brain. If our brain's running low battery, we got to plug that into some nutrition, some food, and get that brain working again. We also know it's not just food in general, right? We know it depends on the types and how well our diets are, our nutrition. That's really going to impact how well our bodies are going to work. So when proper nutrition is lacking, meaning maybe we don't get a lot of variety, maybe we're deficient in some nutrients, what we can start to see is this low energy. And I'm sure everyone can relate to at least one of these images right here, right? We're just tired, or maybe you notice your kids too, right? Maybe after school, they haven't had a snack and you notice that they're pretty groggy, they don't really want to do anything. Also, difficulty focusing. That's a big one, especially when it comes to our kids being in school or even at home when we're trying to do different activities. The last one is poor mood. When our nutrition is inadequate, it can really impact our mood. So as I mentioned, nutrition is going to impact our energy. Food is fuel. Again, my analogies here, they work quite well, especially the whole car one, which is, right, food is fuel. Just like how a car needs either to plug into some electrical outlet or it needs gas in its tank to run, our bodies are the same way. A lot of times I use this with student athletes. That tends to register with them a lot, but really any child or adult should be able to understand that. Also mood, as I mentioned, food is going to impact our mood for a number of reasons. When we're well fed, again, that nutrition is adequate, we're more likely to be happy than if we're skipping meals, if we're not getting a good variety of the different nutrients that we need. We're going to more like be hangry maybe. If you're not familiar with the term hangry, it's just the combination of being hungry and angry. A lot of times clients will tell me, Gina, my 10-year-old is so cranky, at the end of the day, they haven't had anything to eat. I'm trying to get dinner on the table. Come to find out, maybe they didn't have an afternoon snack that day because they were rushing for whatever reason. We want to avoid being hangry. Also, that ability to focus, right? We know food nutrition is going to help boost that brain power, help not only our kiddos, but also us. If you're working or when you're getting through the day with a family, you definitely need to focus on your own nutrition too. So the next piece of our presentation this evening is about the major nutrients when it comes to nutrition and diet. Now, I broke them down into 4 categories for tonight. Number 1 is protein. I'm sure we're all familiar with protein, and we'll get into each of these next. Carbohydrates, fats, and fruits/vegetables or fiber. So take a moment and think about those 4 things, and then maybe think about what you had for lunch. If you even ate lunch, did it include these 4 major nutrients? Maybe you packed your kiddos' lunch today, or maybe they packed it. Did it include these 4 major nutrients? Okay, protein is up first. We all know, or a lot of people immediately think protein, they think muscle. And it's true, we know that protein helps with muscle repair and regrowth. But did you also know that protein plays a role in alertness? So again, when it comes to trying to focus, getting enough protein is going to help with that. This idea of brain fog, one reason could be maybe not getting enough protein, along with some other reasons that we won't get into right now. We also know protein is going to support different activities that are going on inside the cells in our body. Also, brain cell function. So again, that ability to focus, our brain's working properly, it needs protein. It also helps build tissue, fights fatigue and inflammation. A lot of times when we're working with student athletes, protein comes up a lot in trying to make sure that we're getting enough, we're getting a variety there. So that's something that a dietitian could help you with if you do have a student athlete or if you're an athlete yourself. And just a reminder here that protein isn't just for muscles. We know we need it for a number of other things too. So here are just some family-friendly protein sources. Now, obviously this list isn't all inclusive here. I can only fit so many things on the slide. If you are a family that are vegetarian or vegan, of course, some of these options aren't going to work for you. But working with a dietitian, you can ensure that your child or your family is getting enough protein. Some of the options for vegetarians are more towards the right-hand side of our screen. So these are just some quick ideas for you and your family, different ways you could incorporate them. We'll kind of talk about a little bit later. Okay, moving on to carbohydrates. So carbohydrates immediately, when I ask people what they think of carbs, they say, oh, carbs are bad. Like I try to limit my carbs, potato chips, potatoes, French fries, pastas, breads. Yes, those are all sources, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. But we tend to forget that the brain and the body prefer carbohydrates as an energy source. So think back to that, one of those first slides with that battery level above the body and the battery level above that brain. Both of those things, the body and the brain, they look for carbohydrates first. It's its first source of energy. Also, carbohydrates are going to supply certain micronutrients, things like fiber and B vitamins, which are all essential in making sure that our kids and we stay healthy as adults. Kids need carbohydrates, and I can't say this enough. I talk to parents about this all the time. Sometimes I'll get parents in, in a one-on-one session with me and they'll say, it feels like my child only eats carbohydrates, right? They prefer the carbohydrates. They're always grabbing bread. They're always grabbing crackers. And there's a reason for that. Typically, kids are very active. Their little growing bodies need carbohydrates all the way up into adulthood too. Adults, we also need carbohydrates. One of the reasons I like to share with some parents when they say my child will only eat like Ritz crackers and this one type of bread from the store, one of the reasons might be is because they're pretty reliable food products. If you take a step back and you say, okay, crackers are pretty much going to be the same no matter what box you pick up. Typically, a large company's bread product is also going to be pretty standard across the board versus something maybe a little bit different and dependent on how you cook it or prepare it, like a fruit or a vegetable, they might not be so keen on that item. So remind yourself of that if you're struggling with your kids to get more of a variety. One big message here is not all carbs are created equal. We have simple carbohydrates versus complex carbohydrates. And I'm sure just by looking at the picture, you can guess which one we want to try to focus more on. But I want to highlight here that it doesn't mean we can never have simple carbohydrates, which are going to be things like white breads and pastas, things like sugary cereals, or the cookies and cakes and sodas of the world. It doesn't mean we can't have them. We just know that they're simple, meaning they're going to be digested pretty quickly, and they give you just a quick burst of energy. They raise your blood sugar up, but then they're gone. And then you're back maybe feeling a little hangry. Versus our complex carbohydrates, they're more complicated, right? There's fiber in there. You could see the fruits and the vegetables and the whole grains, things like brown rice, quinoa. So there's a variety of complex carbohydrates as well. These ones, and this helps to explain to kiddos, these are kind of the longer lasting carbohydrate options or energy source, you could say. These ones are going to fuel you up for longer. They're going to charge your battery for longer. Whatever analogy you want to use, you can kind of share it that way. Okay, family-friendly carbohydrate sources. Again, not an inclusive list, and I can't list everything on our slide here. Mashed potatoes usually go over depending, the kid or the family. Sweet potato fries, whether we bake them or maybe at a restaurant, it's okay. They're still a source of carbohydrate. Corn on the cob. One of my favorite things to make for my family is butternut squash mac and cheese. That's going to give you 2 sources of carbohydrates. And you can see some other options here. Whole wheat breads and wraps and bagels, whole wheat crackers. We definitely want to make sure our kids are getting that carbohydrate source, and ideally one of those complex ones that you see here. Okay, fats. So fats are a concentrated source of energy, right? There's a lot of bang for your buck there when it comes to calories or energy. Some fat we know is beneficial. Our bodies need it. But we also know that too much fat, specifically maybe the unhealthy fats, are going to be harmful. So fats we know are going to be required for things like our brain health, our hormone balance, temperature regulation. We know that fat also plays a role in injury prevention. So again, if you have a student athlete, fat is going to help cushion those joints. So we definitely want to have it. Some fat, again, is going to be so beneficial. Too much can be harmful when it's the wrong type. So looking at types of fats now, what are some family-friendly ones? This slide also contains just those heart-healthy ones. So we're looking at things like nuts and seeds and their butters, things like olives, olive oil, avocado. A lot of you probably know this information, but just to have it in front of you to remind you that these are the fats that we want to focus on. If we also get fat from things like meat, right, that's okay too, because it's an energy source for our kiddos. And things like steak also provide other nutrients like iron. So nothing is good or bad, which I'm going to talk about. But when it comes to fat, we can look at our child's diet, our family's diet, and say, hey, you know, with our tacos tonight, I'm going to put some guacamole on the side and maybe my kids will eat it, or maybe, you know, I love it. Perfect. We're getting some healthy fats there. Another thing I also encourage parents to do with their kiddos is include salad dressings, right? So when we're dipping things, let's put some salad dressing there or some hummus. Fruits and veggies are next. Fruits and veggies, if you remember back to that slide when I talked about the 4 major nutrients, I said that fruits and veggies were there because they contain fiber. Fiber is so, so important for a variety of reasons, one of which is digestion. Sometimes we get kids in our office where, actually a lot of times, who are constipated. Maybe they're not getting enough fiber in their diet, or the opposite is happening, and maybe they're having diarrhea or other GI issues. Fiber can help. It also plays a role in heart health. It can help lower cholesterol. It helps keep you full for longer. Plus, there's vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants in our fruits and veggies as well. Okay, so some sources just to review here. Fresh fruit and vegetables, right? The list goes on and on. Just do a quick Google search and you can print out a sheet of all the different types of fruits and vegetables. Sometimes I will actually have clients do this when I'm working with them one-on-one, and I'll have them go through and just highlight either for themselves or for their family, their child, what they are eating. And just to give yourself a good idea, hey, are we getting into a rut here where every morning at breakfast, I'm only serving orange slices? And you know, every day for lunch, I send my kid with grapes. And maybe for dinner, we don't even have fruit. So maybe thinking about how could I get more variety? Same goes for vegetables, and you can see some different options here. One of the things I love to buy for my kids is freeze-dried fruit, especially if your kiddos like a little crunch. Those are kind of fun to add to cereal or just to snack on. For adults too. Frozen fruits and veggies in a smoothie. At Whole Health Nutrition, I feel like we always talk about smoothies, and there's a reason why. You can pack a lot of bang for your buck into a smoothie when it comes to fruits and vegetables, as well as other nutrients. Frozen vegetables mixed into pasta or rice, I also promote a lot for families who maybe their kids aren't so keen on just, you know, a scoop of carrots. Well, if we have those carrots mixed into some pasta or some rice with maybe, you know, a pesto sauce or Alfredo sauce, maybe they're going to be more likely to eat it. Fruit leathers, veggie fries, veggie chips, applesauce, right? You can find any variety of fruit sauce now. I feel like pouches are okay too, as well as fruit cups. So thinking about mixing it up when it comes to fruit and veggies. One note here is that we acknowledge that even beyond this list here of fruits and vegetables, maybe it's protein, maybe it's carbohydrates for your kids, or maybe it's fats. It can be a struggle to get these things into our families' mouths, right? Sometimes it's just not happening. If we can start to switch things up, again, you know, pairing vegetables or even fruits with foods that your child or your family already like, so that they're having it together. You know, trying different condiments with certain proteins, right? Maybe your kid's not really into meatballs with tomato sauce, but they like teriyaki sauce, so maybe we try that. Cheese, typically a lot of kids will like, and adults, or maybe we just need to prepare things a different way, right? If we're constantly serving the same old, you know, baked or grilled chicken with some plain rice and some steamed broccoli, it gets kind of boring. It's not that exciting. I'd probably eat it, but I wouldn't be thrilled about it. Let's think about different ways we can do that, like roasting our broccoli, or adding some different sauces or some cheese to that broccoli. Picky eating, or we like to call it selective eating, could be a whole nother presentation. So I can't spend too much time right now talking about it, but I'm happy to answer questions at the end, or maybe add a couple more tips throughout. What I want to do now, however, is talk about how are we going to get these nutrients that we just went over onto our family's plate, right? It's all great if we know the information. Chances are you've heard of those 4 nutrients that I just went over before. But now it's saying, okay, how are we going to apply this knowledge so that we can focus on our child's nutrition and our own nutrition as well? So we have a couple different things coming up. One of them is this balanced plate idea. Now you've probably seen this before. It's up in schools, it's up in doctors' offices. It's my plate, and it's just a depiction of what our goal is for our plates, what they should almost look like, right? It doesn't have to be perfect, but what we're shooting for is protein to take up maybe about a quarter of our plate, grains to take up a quarter, and then fruits and vegetables to take up the remaining half of our plate. Maybe we have some dairy on the side or a drink like water. This is kind of the general idea. If we look to now this depiction, it's the same concept, but this one has some photos in it, right? Some images, I should say. Kind of gives you a little bit more of an idea of what should be contained in each section of our plate. Now, a lot of times when I show this to clients or families or groups like this one, I'll get someone who raises their hand or chats me and says, hey, my family doesn't eat off of a divided plate, right? Our meals are all combined. It's stir fry, there's rice mixed in, there's chicken and vegetables. And how am I supposed to figure that out? Or maybe you're big on casseroles and you have a casserole. How am I going to do this? In your head, I want you to deconstruct that meal. So let's take stir fry, for example. If I were to take my plate, put my stir fry on my plate or in my bowl, and if I were to go through and divide it up, would the vegetables in my stir fry take up about half of my plate? Would the chicken in my stir fry or the shrimp in my stir fry take up a quarter of my plate? And what about that rice? Would it take up a quarter of my plate, or would it be more like half of my plate? So you can apply your dishes, your family's preferred dishes, to this concept and just tweak the portions so that they look a little bit more like this my plate or this balanced plate that you see here. What this does when it comes to portioning out our plates like this and our kids' plates, what it does is it fills our kids up and ourselves on fiber and makes sure that they're getting a good amount of protein as well as carbohydrates. So here's a little quiz. When we look at breakfast, would you consider this breakfast a balanced plate? If you would like to participate, you can. And put your answer in the chat, or if you're at home watching this recording, maybe just take a moment and say out loud, yes or no. Is it a balanced plate? So we have an English muffin here. We have scrambled eggs, and we have grapes. We've got our protein coming from those eggs. We've got our grains with that quarter of a plate, and we got our fruits with a quarter of a plate. Now we've got a no response. It's not a balanced plate. And this is kind of a trick question. I just told you that we want to make sure that we have half of our plate filled up with fruits and vegetables, a quarter protein, a quarter grain. So we're good when it comes to protein and grains, but it's that fruit, right? And I look at this too and I say, it doesn't feel very balanced. So I would say, yeah, you know what, as a dietitian, I would love to see some, maybe some spinach and tomatoes, like scrambled in with those eggs. But also, I'm realistic and I know a lot of families aren't necessarily going to do that. If this is the plate that your kid or that you have before you head off for the day, whether it be work or school or just errands, whatever you're doing, I would be happy. And maybe down the road, we can tweak it a little bit more. So yes, we could, add a couple little things, but if this is a jumping off point, love it. We'd say, yes, let's make that a balanced plate for now. Okay, now how about this one? Now knowing what you know about the previous plate, is this a balanced plate? So breakfast, as I said, being realistic, maybe we're not getting our veggies in. Would you say that this is, for the most part, balanced or not? And just take a moment. If you're at home watching this recording. So this is where I like to point out nutrition isn't so black and white. Maybe this is a balanced plate for someone who never used to eat breakfast. And all of a sudden they're having a slice of toast with some peanut butter and a banana. We're getting grains on that plate. We're getting protein. We're getting fruit. Yeah, I would say as a dietitian, again, I would love to see some carrot sticks on the side or something, but it's breakfast. A lot of people aren't going to do that. And you don't necessarily have to. We could also maybe add in a little bit more fruit, right? This banana, it's only like 6 little slices. Maybe we add some strawberries in. Maybe we have an applesauce on the side. Protein as well, I would say you probably could add maybe a glass of milk or some yogurt too. Again, if you're just starting out and you're like, hey, this is all that I'm able to eat for breakfast, or maybe it's all that my kid will say yes to, hey, awesome. Let's go there and call it a balanced plate. This one, is this breakfast a balanced plate? This is kind of a softball to everybody out there. Everyone's probably shaking their head. Scott, you're shaking your head. No. Yeah, so we have some chocolate chip muffins, which count as grains, right? I would love to argue here that these muffins are chock full of, oats, and maybe there's some flaxseed in there and some hemp hearts and whole wheat flour, and it's a healthy muffin. But I'm thinking just by the looks of it, it might not be. What happened to our protein? And what about a fruit or a vegetable? If we were to add yogurt here with some blueberries, or maybe even, a smoothie on the side, that's going to be a much more balanced plate than just those muffins alone. So think about this next time when, maybe you are having breakfast on the go. Maybe you're just trying to get the kids out of the house and you have to get to work. You're like, here are some muffins. Hey, here's a yogurt cup too. Here's a cheese stick. A lot of kids will eat cheese any time of day. So throw them a cheese stick that gives them some protein, and maybe an apple or a banana, right? We do have quick, easy options for those rushed mornings as well. Okay, some more questions here for everybody. If this for lunch, would this be a balanced plate? It looks like we have a bagel sandwich here with some turkey and cheese. There's lettuce and tomato, as well as some carrot sticks. I'd like to see maybe some like ranch dressing to dip in, or some hummus on the side. But then we also have some grapes. So take a moment, think about it. Does this look more balanced than not? Yeah, so getting some thumbs up. It is. So this is kind of what we're shooting for. Not saying that it has to happen every single time, but that's what our goal is. So we have our protein coming from the turkey and from the cheese. We've got our bagel providing those grains. Vegetables we have on the side plus in the sandwich. A lot of times this is a point of, I would say, discussion between myself and some of my adolescent clients that I work with. They're saying, whoa, Gina, I put a slice of tomato or 1 leaf of lettuce in my sandwich. Doesn't that count as my vegetable? My answer is always, it counts as part of your vegetable intake, but we need to amp it up a little. Let's put some, carrot sticks on the side with your favorite salad dressing, ranch, right? So having that conversation with kids can help a little bit. And then of course we have our fruit. So we're golden there. Okay, pizza, pepperoni pizza. Does this look like a balanced plate? Take a moment, think about it. We have grains and we have protein, but what's missing, right? We know vegetables and fruit. I know I'm like a broken record at this point, but what could we do? For ourselves, maybe it's a big salad. Maybe it's, half our plate of salad. Sounds great. Maybe your kids, your family, they don't really like salad so much. Get out the veggie sticks. Maybe you have, leftover roasted broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, something left over you could put. You could also combine those vegetables with some fruit. So you have half your plate made up of vegetables and of fruit, and that would balance it out a little bit more. Here we also add a glass of milk. And the reason being, it doesn't necessarily have to be there, but I will say the amount of pepperoni and cheese on this pizza probably isn't enough protein. So you could always add that milk on the side, and that might just round things out a little bit better. Okay, we're coming up on the end of these little quizzes here. So is this a balanced plate for dinner now? Looks like we have a serving of pasta with some meat sauce, I'd say, and then some broccoli. I don't know about anybody else, but if you're watching this before dinner or before a meal, I'm like starving, so this looks delicious. So it's pretty balanced. We could say the protein is coming from the meat in the sauce. I would like to say that maybe this spaghetti is a bean-based pasta, which means there's going to be a little bit more protein in there. Bean-based pastas, I feel like are everywhere now. Banza is one brand. Also, Barilla makes a protein plus pasta, so that would be another option. Grains, maybe it's a little bit more than a quarter of your plate here. And then you see vegetables. And if your family will eat half a plate of broccoli, wow, I'm impressed. If not, maybe we add some fruit on that plate as well. I'm a huge proponent of at dinner time having, a communal bowl of fruit. Have some sliced pineapple out there, have some grapes that you just washed off, have strawberries, orange slices, whatever, just to round things out a little bit. Okay, this is the last one, I swear. Dinner. Is this a balanced plate? Looks like we have some chicken or turkey slices, some vegetables, and some apple slices. So this is looking, I don't know, balanced or not. To me, it looks pretty balanced, but again, being a dietitian, I'm wondering, think back to what I told you that kids need. What about a grain or a starch? Our kids are active, they're growing. We want to include something, exactly. So carbohydrates are what we need here. So maybe we add some roasted potatoes, right? If it's not roasted potatoes, it could be something different like some wild rice, or maybe it's a whole wheat dinner roll, whatever. We just want to make sure that our kids have this balanced plate going on. All right, so that was our last quiz. Here are a list of some family-friendly meal ideas for dinner. I love sharing with my clients. Let's do theme nights, especially when we're talking about meal planning. I don't mean theme night like you have to bust out costumes and, different dinnerware and all this stuff. I just mean when it comes to making a template for the week. So meaning Monday. Typically Monday is going to be our meatless Monday, Taco Tuesday, right? But within those categories of themes, we change up the options. So for example, maybe, Wednesday is stir fry night. This week we had tofu with frozen mixed veggies. You can see the other here, jasmine rice, a low sugar stir fry sauce. But maybe next week, instead of tofu, we do maybe like ramen bowls. It's still kind of like stir fry, right? There's noodles there, you got vegetables. You could do maybe shrimp or chicken in your ramen bowl. And you could see some of these other ideas here. This just gives you, again, that template. So the meal planning aspect of nutrition isn't as daunting. You can just fill in the blanks with whatever you're in the mood for or whatever your kids are in the mood for. The other one that I really like is Saturday here. It's build your own. So this could be, build your own sandwich night where you have a variety of sandwich options that people are building their own sandwiches. Or my personal favorite is like a loaded sweet potato bar where you have baked sweet potatoes, or I've been known to microwave them to cook them. And then you have different options. So maybe there's some, leftover rotisserie chicken out there. Maybe there's some shredded cheese and some black beans and barbecue sauce. Could our kids build their own little baked potato out of these options? You as the parent could be there to kind of guide them. Does this potato look balanced to you? I noticed you have chicken on there, but hey, we need some fruit and some veggies either on the plate or on the potato. Let's balance it out a little bit. So hopefully this slide kind of gives you a little bit of inspiration to start focusing a little bit more on your child and your family's nutrition, because I know we all try, right? So think about this. How many times per day do you want to balance your family's plate? Take a moment, think about it. I'm sure you're going to guess. I'm seeing some fingers. 3. Yes. 3 times a day is our goal. I put this slide in here because it's a good talking point, a good reminder that this is the goal. A lot of times when I do chat with parents, they come in, they're overwhelmed already because maybe their child isn't really eating a whole lot of different things. And when I say, hey, we need to balance your child's plate 3 times a day, They're saying, hold on, hold the phone. I can barely get my child to eat what I cooked for dinner. Like, how am I supposed to get them to eat a balanced plate 3 times a day? This is when it's important to maybe reach out to a dietitian like one of us at Whole Health, just to help you maybe get some more ideas and some strategies so you can reach this goal of 3 meals a day. Now, what about snacks? Just shifting gears here a little bit. So we know snacks are going to help bridge that gap between meals. We want to plan for snacks if our meals are greater than 3 to 4-ish hours apart. Now, for a lot of people, typically I see this happening between lunch and dinner. Sometimes the greatest gap between meals is breakfast and lunch, or maybe both are pretty long. Maybe you're going 6 hours between breakfast and lunch, and then another 6 hours between lunch and dinner. This is where we want to add in snacks. The reason is, whether it be for ourselves or for our family, our children, is it helps keep that energy up, right? It's going to help fuel our bodies and our minds, like we've kind of been talking about throughout this presentation. When we don't do that, it's called kind of this blood sugar roller coaster. We wake up in the morning, we have something quick for breakfast, if anything, our blood sugar spikes up like a roller coaster going up. And then it's those simple carbohydrates maybe, so not a lot of fiber, quick energy, our blood sugar is going to drop again. When our blood sugar is low, we get hangry, right? It's harder to focus. Our bodies don't have a lot of energy to really do it much. And then the next thing we know, okay, it's lunchtime, 6 hours later, I'm starving. I'm going to eat a bunch, something quick, easy, more simple carbohydrates, and so on and so forth. We repeat this roller coaster for our blood sugar. This is where snacks come in. Let's fit those snacks in between. Now, you or your children might need a different amount of snacks. It really depends on the individual, especially if someone is more active, if we have a student athlete, it all depends on the person. One thing I want to point out here is that we want to treat treats like treats, not snacks. So a lot of times I'll get, a kiddo who comes in to work with me and they'll say, oh, for a snack, I had a cookie. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Cool. I love cookies. But it's not really a balanced snack. It's okay once in a while to have that cookie, totally fine. But if we're going to have a cookie for a snack, could we maybe pair it with maybe some like yogurt or maybe a piece of fruit just to balance it out a little bit? Now, there's a magic snack formula that I always share with folks. What we want to aim to do when it comes to snacks for our families is combine a protein or a healthy fat plus a carbohydrate. And I'm going to give you a bunch of examples on the next slide here, but I just want to explain why is this a magic formula. The reason is that protein and that healthy fat is going to stay in your body or your child's body longer than just eating something like some crackers by themselves. So the protein and the healthy fat helps your snack last longer. It helps for a slower release of blood sugar versus that carbohydrate gives your body that immediate blood sugar, glucose, that it needs. So your blood sugar goes up, the protein and the fat help it last a little bit longer. So some family-friendly snack ideas. Again, not all inclusive here, just to kind of get the ball rolling for you. The famous apple and peanut butter or other nut butter. I know a lot of schools are nut-free, so there's other options there. An apple and a cheese stick also makes for a great snack. A clementine with some nuts. Again, if your school is nut-free, maybe replacing that with a cheese stick or a yogurt, or maybe if you can have seeds, maybe some, sunflower seeds, trail mix, Greek yogurt and fruit, smoothies, hard-boiled eggs. You can kind of see the options here. I just did a selective eaters class with a pediatrician's office, and we did some taste tests and we used chocolate hummus and we had strawberries, and the kids loved that. We also paired it with some whole wheat pretzels and crackers and bread. So they also had that going too. And there were apple slices. So thinking about, maybe opening your kids, view on food a little bit. Let's just call it chocolate dip. If your kid's old enough to read labels, yeah, they'll know it's hummus, but will they really care if there's, strawberries and apples to dip in and it's chocolate? Maybe not. So thinking about some of these different ideas. The frozen yogurt tube, I love, especially for this time of year as we head into summer. Get those yogurt tubes, throw them in the freezer, especially if they're starting to near the end date, and it could be a nice, cool, refreshing treat that's going to give them protein and some carbs too. Okay, so overall, we know our goal is to eat a variety. We want to try to eat the rainbow, right? We can always say this to kids. I actually, with some of my kiddos, I will print out this kind of checklist, and we'll see, okay, over the course of 1 week, how many different colored fruits and veggies did you eat? We'll look and we'll say, oh no, like we're missing purple or blue. Like what could we do? Let's get some blueberries into a smoothie, or maybe we'll try a purple potato because those are so different and cool. Like, why not? So really eating a variety here. It's not just when it comes to fruits and vegetables too. I want you to think about just variety in general. I know I mentioned before with, breakfast, if we're always serving sliced oranges, and mix it up and let's do some strawberries. It also applies to, sandwiches. If we're always doing peanut butter and jelly, could we maybe mix that up when we do jelly with some cream cheese? Maybe we do it on a, whole wheat wrap instead of, bread one day. There's all different ways we can mix it up. By mixing it up for ourselves, but also for our kiddos, we know that we're going to get a variety of tastes and textures and flavors and smells, but we're also going to provide a variety of nutrients. By doing this, we're going to make sure that our kids are better set up as they're growing up. They're going to be fueled, but also as they grow up and are exposed to different foods as adults, we're setting them up to also make these healthier decisions. So as parents, if you're watching this, just think about you're setting an example for your kids and your family. So if they see you eating a variety, if they see you trying new foods, like for me, for example, I really don't like cucumbers. Don't tell anybody. But, my kid knows this. And it's funny because we'll have cucumbers. He loves them. He's like, Mom, maybe try it in the dip. And, I'll try it, but it's still not crazy about it. So showing your kids that you try too, you're getting that variety in, it can help. Okay, we're going to talk about water and then we're going to wrap it up, and I'll leave a little bit of time for questions. I know we don't have many participants, but let's talk about water because we can't miss out on this essential nutrient. We know our bodies are made mostly of water, and you could see from this image here, our brain, our lungs, our blood. We know that water is going to help with our body temperature, helps prevent dehydration. The last point here, water helps maintain mental and physical performance. Again, thinking back to one of those first slides when I said nutrition impacts our bodies and our brains, water is included in that. So how much is enough? This is a question I get all the time in my professional life, but also my personal life from friends and family. How much water should I be drinking? I started drinking a gallon of water per day. Is that enough? Should I be having less? Da, 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 da. It's really hard because the amount you need is really dependent on you and a number of other factors. Someone who's in a larger body, like an adult, is going to need more water than someone in a smaller body, like a child. So thinking, we want to drink to thirst, but some kids and even some adults aren't able to kind of regulate that on their own. So this is where it comes to looking in that toilet bowl, whether it be for yourself or your child who might not get it yet. Your urine should be a pale yellow to clear. If you're looking in that toilet bowl and you're like, whoa, that looks like apple cider, chances are we need to hydrate a lot. So you want it to be more clear, right? The one thing I want you to note here is that some medications and some supplements can alter the color of your urine. So just keep that in mind, especially with kids, like giving a child a multivitamin right after their urine might be kind of like neon green or yellow, you can assure them that's okay. Let's look at your urine the next time to gauge how hydrated you are. So take a moment here, think to yourself, what do you drink? If it's one of these things up here, great. If it's something else, like I don't see coffee up here and I love coffee, so I would add that to my list. Now take a moment and think about, what do your kids drink? What does your family drink? And I know this can be challenging for a lot of adults because I've worked with families before who they feel like they just can't get their kids off of soda and energy drinks. When you look at this slide here, the drinks towards the left hand of this slide are our kind of sometimes drinks. Our drinks over here to the right, that water, that flavored seltzer, those are the drinks that we want to be drinking and have our kids drinking the majority of the time. Once in a while, totally fine to have the occasional Powerade, the occasional energy drink, the occasional soda. I know in my house it's ginger ale. Sometimes we want ginger ale. So I get the little cans of ginger ale, we have it, and then we're done with it. Usually at this point, I'll get a question, hold up, Gina, my child is an athlete. They need Powerade, don't they? And I'll say, well, it really depends, like, are they sweating a whole lot? Are they exercising for more than an hour and it's the hot summer sun? Do they need it? And they might. So this is where it comes to working with a dietitian to figure out, what is my child's sweat rate? Do they need to replace and refuel with something like Gatorade or Powerade? And you can work with that dietitian to figure it out. Majority of people don't necessarily need that. So again, thinking about drinks. This brings me to sugar, and we're kind of wrapping it up here. So when it comes to sugar, and really all foods in general, there is no such thing as good or bad. I know I already introduced this concept when we talked about carbohydrates. A lot of times people will think that carbohydrates are bad, and sugar is a carbohydrate. But we know we don't want to be labeling foods like that for our own relationship with food, but also for our family's relationship with food. You could see here, this little guy is thinking about cupcakes versus fruit. And if you're sitting there, you're like, well, I know what I would choose, and I know what my child would choose. And it's okay, right? We're kind of born to prefer sweet things. If you think about it, from birth, we have milk. Milk is sweet. So we're kind of programmed to like sweet things. But now we have this knowledge and we say, hey, we can have those sweets, but we also need to make sure we're getting a variety. We're also getting fiber. And that's where kind of thinking about this added sugar idea versus this natural sugar idea comes into play. You could see this can of A&W root beer, which is a classic. It has 39 grams of added sugar. And you might be sitting there saying, okay, cool, like 39 grams, I don't really know what that means. So for every 4 grams of added sugar that you see on the side of a soda can or pancake mix or a cereal box or a nutrition bar, whatever it is, 4 grams is equivalent to 1 teaspoon of sugar, of added sugar. So this 1 can of soda has almost 10, which is scary to think about, 10 teaspoons of added sugar. Now, if you think about that, would you sit down and have 10 teaspoons of, let's say, like white sugar from a bowl? Probably not, right? Most people wouldn't do that. So why are we having it in a drink or providing our kids with it? Again, once in a while is fine, right? All foods fit here. But how often is it happening? If we look at this handful of grapes, let's call it a cup of grapes. It's about 16 grams of natural sugar. Now, natural sugar is that sugar that the food is kind of born with, if you will, right? It's inherent in that food. Manufacturers are not adding it in like that soda. Sugar is already in grapes. Sugar is already in some of, or I should say all of our carbohydrates. It's 4 teaspoons of sugar that your body's getting, but it's also getting fiber, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, things that we probably don't even realize because we haven't found out about it yet. So trying to, relay this message, depending on your kid's age, of course. Communication surrounding food and sugar and all the things we talked about tonight is important to set our kids up with a healthy relationship with food. So again, I know I'm, plugging in whole health here a lot, but choosing a dietitian, working with them to figure out like, hey, what are some smart ways that I can chat with my child about nutrition so that they're set up for success and I'm not harming them. So to wrap up nutrition, why it matters, this is kind of just an outline of what we talked about. So we know we are what we eat, and that food is going to impact not only our mood, but our energy and our ability to focus. There's 4 major nutrients that we want to be incorporating into our family's plate. Focusing on that variety, switching things up, keeping it interesting, trying our best to balance that plate 3 times a day, including snacks and drinking water, are all parts of this kind of nutrition goal that we're, focusing on. So finding a nutrition plan for your family, that's where, again, dietitians come in. Insurance, commercial and state insurance usually cover up to 1, if not more, maybe 3, maybe unlimited visits with a dietitian. It also depends on kind of why you're seeing a dietitian. You might get more sessions. And we see families and individuals for a number of reasons you can see here. When it comes to our program tonight, I'm guessing a lot of you are obviously here because you have a family. So thinking about, pediatric nutrition, so nutrition for your kids for healthy growth and development. Maybe you've tended to label your child as a picky eater. We work with these selective eaters a lot. Eating disorders is another big one. Sports nutrition is another big one for this group. Diabetes, autoimmune disorders, like the list goes on and on. So we do presentations like this, as well as cooking classes for groups, as well as for businesses. And of course, we do this all virtually and in person at our office in Colchester, like Scott mentioned. So if anybody does have questions, I'd love to answer them now. You can also check us out on social media. You can see our information down there. But yeah, I can open it up for questions if anybody has any. And I think you should be able to unmute yourself.
More protein, thinking it would sustain her for longer, but you just mentioned carbs. Should I, because that's what she wants to eat. Should I?
Yes. Yeah, so let me flip back to those slides from the beginning here. So carbohydrates, as I did, it's on here. Here. Okay, so our children need those carbohydrates, especially your daughter's active. She's an athlete. She's burning through calories. Carbs are going to be her body's friend, right? That's where we get that immediate energy to like go into a competition and perform. You're not incorrect when you are also providing protein, because that's going to help, yes, keep her full for a little bit longer, but more importantly, the protein after is going to help her body recover, repair, and rebuild those muscles. So for next time, she's able to perform again. So when it does come to carbs, if she's preferring that before a competition, before a practice, whatever it is, allow her to have it. I would say if it's within an hour of an activity like that, have a handful of goldfish. She can have, leading up to the, event too. Maybe for breakfast, she adds maybe some peanut butter to her toast if she's open to that. That would be totally fine. Kids need carbs. And then for her, I would say I'm less concerned right now about this idea of simple carbs versus complex. Sports nutrition could also be a whole nother presentation, but just real quick. Simple carbs sometimes have their place. And I'd say if your daughter's not open to like a whole grain toast, but she's totally on board to have like Wonder Bread or another white bread with peanut butter, by all means, go for it. Like I'd rather have her be doing that, and that's providing energy and nutrition, than having nothing at all. And here are some other ideas. If she's into pasta, doing like a pasta with, it could be mac and cheese. I mean, it could really be anything in her situation. Does she like oatmeal?
Yeah, she does.
So that could be, you know, an option. You could add fruit to it, maybe some nuts, a little bit of maple syrup, whatever she wants. Another thought I just had, does she like to bake or anything like that? Because you can make, you know, kind of these breakfast cookies that she could have as snacks, but or for breakfast. And they're just like jam packed with oats and dried fruit and nuts and seeds and things.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the grab and my husband's saying the kids love those at school, and that would be kind of the grab and go concept for her busy days when she's
definitely
performing.
Yeah, doing convenience foods, right? I don't know if she's into like, yeah, those breakfast cookies or the Lara bars are good. Like hard-boiled eggs, a piece of fruit, a banana, you know, a milk juice box, a pre-made smoothie, a homemade smoothie. So yeah, hopefully that helps to answer your question a little bit. If you do have more questions, feel free to reach out to us and we're happy to work with her and you.
Great, wonderful, thank you.
Gina, I want to say thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us, and your presentation, minus the question portion, will be posted on our website because there's a lot of great information in there. And I was just saying, I was in preparation for tonight, I'm scrolling through your website, and there's just a ton of information on so it's wholehealthnutritionvt.com, which is on the screen. There's a ton of really good recipes. For me, it's going to be the ramen, but
oh yes,
there's a lot of really good resources, and if anyone with us tonight or is watching, you know, please check out, you know, reach out to a registered dietitian for questions. I was saying to Gina before, I feel like everything I learned in high school about nutrition was incorrect now that I'm an adult, and I can confirm that now that I've seen the presentation. But you know, we are appreciative, and you know, hope that folks might reach out to Whole Health Nutrition to continue their journey. And for folks that have popped in and out, we appreciate this. And for folks that are watching or will watch this on the web at some point, which will be posted to the Franklin West website, please feel free to share questions or feedback. And just want to say thank you for our community who's joined. And Gina, thank you once again for sharing your expertise with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.